Hello, my name is Daniel Pressman. This is my opposition opening speech. I'm arguing in opposition of the proposition's argument that the United States federal government ought to pay reparations to African Americans, and I'm going to be arguing based off of a number of contentions. First off, let's keep in mind that the African Americans that actually suffered all the awful abuse and things that we can't possibly imagine, such as my opponent stated, from slavery lived a long time ago, and by giving reparations to all African Americans, not just the descendants of these slaves, we aren't just helping out the direct descendants of slaves, but tons of other immigrants who are black and have no connection to slavery in this country whatsoever, and therefore have pretty much done nothing to deserve these reparations, which would basically symbolize a waste of resources, which is not something our country can really afford right now. Secondly, according to major marketers' research, African Americans, if constituted as their own country, would have the 11th highest gross national product, otherwise known as GDP, of any country in the world, significantly higher than any country that slaves came from in Africa, who, not to mention, have a history of enslaving people in these countries, so they may have been enslaved regardless if they stayed or if they left. With this in mind, it's clear that there are many other races and groups of people in our country, and the world for that matter, that would deserve these reparations before African Americans. In addition to being a wealthy demographic group, which is richer than 90% of the people in the world, blacks in America have a longer life expectancy than African and Caribbean blacks, as well as whites in many parts of Eastern Europe and Latin America, along with the fact that black Americans have higher rates of literacy and achieve more post-secondary degrees as a percentage of the population than blacks in Africa. So you can really make a strong argument that although obviously slavery was an awful institution and it's great for society that it is now abolished, that in many ways African Americans ultimately did benefit from slavery, and that the country they lived in was able to prosper economically because of slavery, and they were able, once emancipated, to enter a country with great economic prosperity and opportunity, and they indulged in it. And the result that we see is that African Americans now have the 11th highest GDP of any country in the world, if constituted as a country by themselves, which obviously isn't the case, but it proves a point. So by giving African Americans some kind of reparations, we would be giving a race that is doing pretty well an unfair boost compared to other races that are doing as well, or races that suffer more than African Americans and would deserve these reparations more. Now, with this being said, this is a perfect transition into my counter plan that would give reparations to Native Americans instead of African Americans through three parts. Native Americans suffer from great poverty, so to address this initial issue, there would be $200,000 paid to all Native Americans. Next, Native Americans would receive small incremental amounts of land over time in areas to be determined and mutually agreed upon by tribes and the federal government as mutually beneficial for both. Lastly, pre-K and public universities will now be free for all Native Americans, along with a 35% increase in funding for public schools with high percentage of Native Americans. It's clear that Native Americans suffered earlier compared to African Americans in our country. That's just a fact. The second we came to our country, Native Americans started suffering because we started taking their land and fighting with them. Again, just some more facts. Native Americans have clearly been more affected by the wrongs that we harmed them than African Americans have, as proved by the fact that they have higher poverty rates than African Americans, lower high school and college graduation rates, a significantly lower GDP per capita, and for many people, they are an afterthought in today's society that is still somehow segregated from the rest of our society. And this counterplan clearly addresses a group of people that are in a more urgent situation, a group of people that are more deserving of reparations. And until Native Americans are taken care of and helped through reparations, I really think it would be unjust for our country to be even talking about giving reparations to African Americans. So this counterplan would hopefully be an obvious immediate financial boost. Would secondly give them land back too, and lastly, the educational boosts are in hopes of increasing high school and college graduation rates, having Native Americans become more of a part of the workforce, and not just a part of the workforce, but prominent jobs in the workforce, and will hopefully help them fix reservations long term. And so that is my opening speech argument. Thank you.